Good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Pravind Kumar Jagnot, Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Mauritius. Mrs. Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garces, President of the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly. Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Ms. Sesuma Minata Samate, Commissioner for Political Affairs of the African Union Commission, representing His Excellency Mr. Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Madam Amina Mohammed, Undersecretary, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Ms. Rhoda King, Permanent Representative of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines to the United Nations and President of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, Mr. Anatolio Ndongba, Permanent Representative of Equatorial Guinea to the United Nations and Champion of the African Union theme for the year 2019, and Madam Maria Luis, Chief of Cabinet in the Executive Office of the Secretary General. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor to welcome all of you to the African Dialogue Series 2019 that is being organized by the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa in collaboration with the African Union Commission, especially the AU mission to the UN, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the Department of Global Communications, and the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The ADS provides a platform to explore critical issues affecting the African continent, including peace, security, human rights, humanitarian and development issues. The series is structured to be highly interactive and inclusive of a wide range of participants. The series also includes representatives from the private sector, civil society, academia, the diaspora, and other key stakeholders. In line with the decision taken last year by the co-organizers to align the African Dialogue Series with the theme of the African Union, this year's series will be held with the overarching theme, Towards Durable Solutions for Forcibly Displaced Persons in Africa. As such, ADS 2019 is one of the activities being organized throughout the year to raise global awareness and advocacy on the challenges of forced displacement with a view to finding durable solutions. Africa is home to over 24 million forcibly displaced persons, representing 1/3 of the world's total. The factors giving rise to this problem are well known: conflict and natural disasters, just to name but a few. Forced displacement is not only a tale of human tragedy, but it poses a real threat to achieving peace, prosperity, and development. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by world leaders, is about people. Therefore, we cannot achieve the ambition of leaving no one behind if we do not find durable solutions to the problem of forced displacement. Finding durable solutions also requires us to take a coherent and integrated approach that recognizes the humanitarian development nexus. The Silhouette approach that focuses exclusively on either development or humanitarian is neither effective nor durable. The agenda of the next 2 days promises to be an exciting one. Following the opening session, we will highlight best practices in African solidarity by showcasing best practices and lessons learned in countries hosting refugees and IDPs. We are joined in this respect by Uganda, Chad, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. They show what is possible with compassion and generosity. I myself am a product of African solidarity. Having left home in my teens during the War of Liberation against apartheid in Namibia, I spent years in refugee camps in Angola and Zambia and benefited immensely from the generosity of the Angolan and Zambian people. I take this opportunity to personally thank you for your big heart. Regrettably, as the Secretary General noted in his address to the 32nd Ordinary Session, while Africa has set a gold standard for solidarity, this example has not been followed everywhere. These African countries, therefore, provide an essential global public good and must be supported through financing and technical assistance. We hope that through the discussions at the ADS, we would be able to identify concrete and practical ways to generate more coherent international support towards refugees and internally displaced persons, especially those countries hosting them in Africa. To ensure that our deliberations will be carried forward, the outcome of the ADS will feed into the regional consultative conferences leading to the Global Forum for Refugees to be held in December 2019. It is my honor to invite for her opening remarks Her Excellency Ms. Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garces, President of the 73rd Session of the United Nations General Assembly. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Excellency Mr. Praveen Kumar Yugnauth, Prime Minister of Mauritius, Mr. Secretary General, Madam Deputy Secretary General, Madam President of the ECOSOC, Excellency Fatima Chiari Mohammed, Permanent Observer of the African Union to the United Nations, Madam Minata Samata Ayu, African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs, dear friend Beans Gawanas, UN Undersecretary General and Special Advisor for Africa, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am really delighted to have the opportunity to take part in this 2019 Africa Dialogue Series. I am very grateful to Her Excellency Biens Gawanas and to the African Union and the UN system for organizing this timely and much-needed event. At the outset of my presidency, I resolved to make Africa one of the focus of my activities. Why? For three reasons. First, Africa's tremendous contribution to the UN continues to be underappreciated and the region's voice underrepresented in the international system. We have what we could be called a solidarity deficit, multilateral decision-making processes, policies and programs that should be skewed towards the needs, views and priorities of Africa are not quite there yet. This is evident in our prevailing approach to those who have been forcibly displaced by violence, emergencies, and disasters. The vast majority, over 80%, are hosted by developing countries, 1/3 in Africa. Many rich countries, meanwhile, have been reluctant to accept significant numbers. We are already contending with the worst displacement crisis since records began. We know that numbers are going to rise dramatically due to climate change. And we know that many displaced persons spend years, even decades, in camps, in exile, in limbo. Clearly, our traditional approach to displacement as a purely humanitarian issue needs to be overhauled. We need longer-term approaches, education, lifelong learning, opportunities to make a living and contribute to society, including for women and girls. We need durable solutions, voluntary return or repatriation as appropriate, but also resettlement and integration. And we need greater political and financial support for transitions at the humanitarian development nexus. The global compacts on refugees and migration adopted last year provide a solid basis for us to move forward, and I call on leaders in Africa and across the world to implement them both. My second reason for focusing on Africa is that it is a bellwether of our efforts to realize the 2030 Agenda and the far-reaching Agenda 2063. One key test of our promise to leave no one behind is ensuring that we meet the Sustainable Development Goals for those who have been displaced, where there are great challenges when it comes to data collection, national planning, and service provision. This is particularly the case for least developed countries like Uganda, which is the third largest host of refugees worldwide. Multilateral institutions must do much more to take this into account. My recent visits to Chad, Nigeria, and Lake Chad Basin have reinforced me the burden-sharing gap between Africa and her partners. The countries that border Lake Chad, indeed the entire Sahel region, is grappling with the impacts of climate, destabilization, insecurity, displacement, refugee and migrant flows that are largely related to external decisions and actions. And yet, the burden of responding to those impacts have largely fallen into the Sahel countries as they seek to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. One of the key objectives of my visit to the region was to draw global attention to the importance of implementing commitments on the Lake Chad Basin, which are critical to the efforts of those countries that achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And third, I have focused on Africa because at a time when the value of multilateralism is being questioned by some, we need African leadership. Time and again, Africa has led the way. Through the 1969 African Union Convention, for instance, which expanded the definition of refugee, and through the Kampala Convention, the first legally binding framework to address internal displacement. So this dialogue provides a much-needed opportunity to share and replicate best practices from the continent. I hope it will also serve to encourage progress on improving the UN's capacity to deliver for Africans with Africans. And I hope it will explore ways to address the solidarity deficit in our international system. The UN's 75th anniversary next year is a golden opportunity to address these issues. I trust that with African leadership, we will seize it. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency, the President of the General Assembly, and I wish to call upon His Excellency, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, to address us. Thank you, sir.
Madam President, Honorable Prime Minister, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Welcome to the Africa Dialogue Series. As we look to build and bolster multilateralism, we need strong coalitions across international and regional organizations, the private sector, civil society, academia, the media, and more. And the Africa Dialogue Series is an important part of this effort. The United Nations and the African Union are deepening our strategic partnership in all areas. We confirmed this once again at the AU-UN Annual Conference earlier this month, when the United Nations and the AU agreed to continue our cooperation on climate action, on implementing the 2030 Agenda and Agenda 2033, on human rights, humanitarian issues, and more. And our joint commitment to peace and security on the African continent was demonstrated most recently in February, when the Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2457 on steps towards ending conflict in Africa through enhanced international cooperation and partnership. We are working together on conflict prevention, including through the African Women's Leaders Network and the EU's Silencing the Guns initiative. And I will continue to push the Security Council for assessed contributions to finance AU-led peace support operations and to work with you on the agreed frameworks, including on cost sharing. While we have made some progress in our peace efforts, we face headwinds. In Libya and Sudan, we need urgent coordinated action to stabilize the situation and pave the way for sustainable peace. In the Central African Republic, we welcome the peace accord brokered by the African Union and will work closely with you on national reconciliation and peace consolidation. In South Sudan, we will continue protecting civilians as we support the peace process and move towards longer-term stability. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, The African Union has chosen refugees, returnees and internally displaced persons towards durable solutions to forced displacement in Africa as its theme for 2019 and for this dialogue series. African countries have a long record of keeping their borders, doors and hearts open to refugees and internally displaced people, an example not followed by everyone in the world. This year, we mark the 50th anniversary of the Organization of the African Union Refugee Convention and the 10th anniversary of the Kampala Convention on Internally Displaced Persons, the only regional convention of its kind. During my time as High Commissioner for Refugees, I witnessed the solidarity and hospitality of African countries. Many continue to set the global standard. Countries like Uganda, Djibouti, Rwanda, and Ethiopia are taking innovative action to recognize and promote the rights of refugees. And African countries played a key role in securing the approval of the Global Compact on Refugees last year. Over the next 2 days, I urge you to build on best practices, to look for short and long-term solutions, to create new and innovative partnerships, to identify areas for stronger international support, and to continue your leadership on this issue. The best way to protect refugees and displaced people is to prevent them from having to leave their homes. That means tackling root causes, poverty, conflict, discrimination, and exclusion of all kinds. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the African Union's Agenda 2063 are our roadmap. Both agendas are aligned around the people-centered and planet-sensitive transformation. Eradicating poverty is their overriding priority. We are working closely together to mainstream these agendas into national development plans and to operationalize the Global Compact for safe, orderly and regular migration to help countries reap the benefits of migration while securing the rights of migrants. However, we must redouble our efforts if we are to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2063. On the current trajectory, we will only be halfway towards achieving the SDGs by 2030. Financing is critical. My strategy for financing the 2030 Agenda sets out ways to align national and global financing strategies with Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations will continue to support African countries in their efforts to mobilize domestic resources and to urge the international community to curb illicit financial flows and end money laundering. And all countries, particularly developed countries, must fulfill their commitments made in the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. In September, the world will gather for a series of summits to take stock of progress made and to mobilize greater urgency, ambition and action. These will include the SDG Summit and meetings on financing for development, universal health coverage, and the situation of small island developing states. I will also convene a Climate Action Summit on the 21st of September, bringing together governments, the private sector, civil society, local authorities, and other international organizations to showcase and develop the ambitious solutions we need. Climate change jeopardizes all our plans for inclusive and sustainable development, and many African countries are particularly vulnerable despite contributing little to global warming. Rising sea levels, droughts, floods, the spread of tropical diseases, and the loss of biodiversity could be devastating. And climate change also multiplies other challenges, other threats, including poverty, conflict, and particularly displacement, and slows economic growth, reducing opportunities for inclusive, sustainable development in Africa and beyond. We must address this global emergency with ambition and urgency. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to consider the issue of displacement in the broadest context in your search for sustainable and durable solutions. And I wish you successful deliberations in this Africa Dialogue series. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General for his remarks. And may I now call upon Her Excellency Ms. Samata, Commissioner for Political Affairs of the African Union Commission, representing the African Union Commission Chairperson. Madame, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur le Premier ministre de la République de Maurice, Madame Maria Fernanda Espinosa, présidente de la 73e session de l'AG des Nations Unies, Monsieur le Secrétaire général, Madame la Secrétaire générale adjointe, ma sœur Gawana, Mesdames et Messieurs, tout protocole observé. Son Excellence, M. Moussa Faki Mahamat, président de la Commission de l'Union africaine, s'excuse de ne pouvoir prendre part à la série de dialogues sur l'Afrique en raison d'engagements pressants liés à la situation sur le continent africain. Il souhaite plein succès aux différentes rencontres organisées justement dans la semaine de la journée de l'Afrique que nous commémorons chaque année le 25 mai. En son nom, j'exprime notre profonde gratitude aux organisateurs de la série de dialogues et en particulier à Mme Gawana pour son engagement personnel en vue de la tenue de la présente réunion. Je suis particulièrement honoré, Mesdames et Messieurs, de participer à ce dialogue, spécialement sur le thème « Réfugiés, rapatriés, personnes déplacées, internes ». Comment trouver des solutions durables aux déplacements forcés sur le continent? Je dois ajouter que ce choix est en phase avec les priorités du continent africain. C'est ce qui a amené la conférence des chefs d'État et de gouvernement à adopter le thème de l'année 2019 sur cette question. Le soutien et la collaboration dont bénéficie l'Union africaine du système des Nations unies dans la planification et la mise en œuvre des activités du thème constitue un excellent exemple de partenariat entre les Nations unies et l'Union africaine. Je voudrais saluer particulièrement le Haut Commissariat des Nations unies pour son important soutien. Nous avons recensé une série d'activités que nous mettons ensemble. Mesdames et Messieurs, la vision globale et le leadership de M. Antonio Guterres et M. Moussa Faki ont jeté les bases solides pour cette collaboration et ce partenariat. Et nous étions ici il y a 2 semaines dans le cadre de la conférence entre nos 2 organisations. Monsieur le secrétaire général, votre solidarité avec les peuples africains et votre soutien aux valeurs panafricaines et la pertinence de vos actions pour relever les défis de ce monde sont appréciés sur le continent africain. Mesdames et Messieurs, la décision des chefs d'État et de gouvernement revêt un double sens, une double signification, et vous l'avez soulevé, signalé, Monsieur le secrétaire général. 2019 marque la commémoration de la Convention de Kampala et également de la Convention de l'Union africaine. Je n'insisterai pas sur ces questions, vous l'avez bien relevé. C'est dire que le thème de l'année 2019 est pertinent et cette pertinence n'est plus à démontrer dans la mesure où l'un des défis majeurs de notre continent est lié justement au déplacement forcé sur le continent africain. Et ce déplacement forcé mine les efforts de développement pour atteindre les nobles objectifs de l'agenda 2063 et de l'agenda 2030. Nous connaissons les causes des déplacements forcés. Ce sont les changements climatiques, vous l'avez signalé, et nous venons de Genève où il a été la plateforme sur ces questions, les catastrophes naturelles et la nécessité de trouver justement une solution à toutes ces questions. Plusieurs États membres ont fait des efforts pour abriter, pour garder les réfugiés. Ces efforts ont abouti à des politiques et à des approches novatrices. Je citerai l'Ouganda, l'Éthiopie, Djibouti et le Kenya. Tout dernièrement aussi, et cela est à saluer, le Niger accueille des réfugiés depuis des décennies, mais déploie aussi des efforts impressionnants pour sauver des vies grâce à son mécanisme de transit d'urgence pour faciliter le rapatriement des réfugiés de Libye. Je saisis cette occasion pour saluer le groupe de travail conjoint Union africaine, UE et ONU chargés de soutenir la solution et la protection des migrants et des réfugiés de Libye. Les défis du déplacement forcé nécessitent une réponse collective. Plus que jamais, nous avons besoin d'un système multilatéral fort, dirigé par les Nations unies en collaboration naturellement avec les organisations régionales pour des solutions pérennes aux problèmes mondiaux. Dans le cadre du thème, la Commission de l'Union africaine a proposé aux États membres une note conceptuelle et une feuille de route qui s'articule autour d'objectifs prioritaires, c'est-à-dire il faut s'attaquer aux causes profondes des crises humanitaires par la prévention de ces crises et la résolution des crises. Il s'agit de poursuivre sans relâche le programme phare de faire taire les armes d'ici 2020. Il s'agit aussi de travailler à la résilience des populations face aux catastrophes naturelles et au changement climatique. À court terme, il s'agit de trouver des solutions, des moyens d'assurer l'éducation des enfants et particulièrement des femmes rapatriées, dont plus de 10 millions sont privées d'éducation. Il faut aussi accorder la priorité aux filles et aux femmes qui, du fait de leur grande vulnérabilité, subissent plus durement les effets du phénomène du déplacement forcé. Également, nous devons mobiliser les ressources permettant de s'attaquer aux causes profondes, apporter une assistance aux États qui subissent le poids de déplacements forcés et surtout faire preuve de solidarité avec ces pays. Au regard de la situation humanitaire sur le continent, il ne fait aucun doute qu'une action urgente est requise en vue d'augmenter le nombre de ratifications des 2 conventions de l'Union africaine et surtout travailler à leur mise en œuvre dans les différents pays. Nous devons renforcer la synergie d'action entre nos organisations pour renforcer l'efficacité de l'action humanitaire. Quelque chose aussi qui a été relevé est l'apatridie. Beaucoup de citoyens africains sont victimes d'apatridie et ce qui les expose à toute forme de violation et d'exploitation. Diverses autres activités seront menées et sous le leadership de son Excellence, M. Obiangema Mbassoko, qui a été désigné par ses pairs comme champion du thème de l'année. Un dialogue de haut niveau sous son leadership est prévu ici même à New York en septembre sur la problématique du déplacement forcé et un sommet extraordinaire est également prévu en novembre sur cette question. C'est vous dire, mesdames et messieurs, que l'importance que revêt la nécessité de prévenir les conflits sur le continent africain. Une grande coopération au développement est indispensable pour trouver une solution durable au déplacement forcé. Dans ce sens, l'Union africaine a décidé de mettre sur pied une agence humanitaire pour faciliter justement et coordonner les efforts en matière de déplacement forcé. Je suis confiante que les conclusions de la réunion de la série de dialogues sur le continent qui commence aujourd'hui nous permettra de trouver des solutions afin de mettre fin au déplacement forcé sur le continent. La Commission de l'Union africaine reste à l'écoute afin de pouvoir l'aider à prendre en charge le déplacement forcé sur le continent. Voilà, excellent, mesdames et messieurs, le message du président Moussa Faki Mahamat et il souhaite plein succès aux rencontres de New York. Merci beaucoup.
I wish to thank my sister, the Commissioner for Political Affairs of the African Union, for bringing the message of Africa to the UN. And to, again, just reiterate what the Secretary General has said in terms of the African Union-UN partnership, that it is as solid as ever and can just continue to be strengthened. At this point in time, I wish to announce the departure of the President of the General Assembly and the Secretary General, and I also take it that we will also take leave of the President of ECOSOC, given that they have, unfortunately, other engagement at this stage. And whilst we are doing the changes, may I please ask the choir just to accompany us, and then we will continue with the address of the Prime Minister of Mauritius. Thank you.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Asem papa de mati, yes, yes, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Asem papa de mati, oh yeah, oh yeah. Asem papa de mati, yes, yes, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. bumaye bokase, oye, 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 me caso la tononce, oye, oye, adama meye, oye, amba, oye, 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 meka, 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 oye, 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 meka, 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 oye, 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 mio panameño, oye, 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 oyo patan papa, oye, 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 asam papa de mati, oye, oye, asam papa de mati, ese Yesu yodorampa, achana meye, oye, yamba, oye, 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 bumaye bonkaste, oye, 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 me caso vina tu se, oye, oye, achana meye, oye, yamba, oye, 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 meka, 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 oye, 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 meka, 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 oye, 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 oyo patan papa, oye, 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 bumaye bonkase, oye, 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 me caso vida tu voce, oye, oye, adama meye, oye, ama, oye, 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 oye.
Thank you very much. Next, not now. Next round, after this. The next, not now. You will come back. Please. Okay, now.
Peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our Father, children all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Thank you very much. And someone was asking me, where did we get this choir from? It's our very own choir. It's the UN choir. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to introduce to you His Excellency, Mr. Joknout, Prime Minister of the Republic of Mauritius, to address us. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Excellency Mrs. Mariam Fernanda Espinosa Garces, the President of the General Assembly. Excellency Ms. Beyoncé Gawanas, the Under-Secretary General and Special Advisor on Africa. Ms. Sesuma Minata Samate, Commissioner for Political Affairs, African Union Commission, representing His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellencies and distinguished representatives. I am indeed greatly honored to be in your midst for the launch of this year's Africa Dialogue series on the theme Towards Durable Solutions for Forcibly Displaced Persons in Africa. This is a very important issue which resonates in practically all countries in Africa, given the fact that a third of the world's forcibly displaced persons are in Africa, and our continent also hosts hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers and stateless persons. It is also an opportunity to laud Africa's impressive tradition of protecting the forcibly displaced through a strong complementary regional refugee, internally displaced persons, and human rights legal framework. Indeed, this year also marks the 50th anniversary of the adoption of the 1969 Organization of the African Unity Refugee Convention. Excellencies, when we talk about forcibly displaced persons, we mean people who are forced to move as a result of conflicts, extreme poverty, fear of terrorist violence and abduction, epidemics, outbreaks, natural disasters, and the severe impacts of climate change, illustrated by the recent disastrous tropical cyclones which wreaked havoc on the continent. Africa is indeed where the vagaries of severe weather cause the most damage, both in terms of human victims and material damage. The impact of such volatile migratory movements leaves people vulnerable in protracted situations where their basic rights and essential economic, social, and emotional needs remain unfulfilled. This results in deep psychological scars, acute depression, a sense of isolation and acculturation, and at times suicide when they are able to escape human trafficking. Forcibly displaced persons often find refuge in the poorest and most marginalized regions, which frequently lack the adequate infrastructures to deal with the population influx. Often, they are in hard-to-reach areas affected by conflicts and/or disasters, where access to water and basic health care is problematic, to say the least. Excellencies, the magnitude and the complexity of internal and forcible displacement does not appear to have garnered sufficient international attention. My own country has greatly suffered from the forcible eviction of thousands of its population from part of its territory. As the international community is now very well aware, in the wake of the illegal excision by the former colonial power of the Chagos Archipelago from the territory of Mauritius in 1965, a human tragedy, which is one of the most shameful episodes in modern history, unfolded. All the Mauritians who were living peacefully at the time in the Chagos Archipelago were forcibly removed and cruelly uprooted from their homes by the former colonial power, in total disregard of their fundamental human rights and in blatant violation of international law. The Chagossians are victims of a strategic, forcible displacement akin to crimes against humanity. In effect, the former colonial power showed no pity, no mercy, nor a basic sense of humanity. Mauritian families were tragically separated. Pet dogs and other animals were gassed and burned to death, and death threats were made to force all the inhabitants out. Several died on board the vessel carrying them. There is testimony of pregnant women on board who had even lost their unborn child because of dire conditions and were subsequently unable to conceive again. Such was the impact of their forcible displacement. This terrible trauma continues to affect Mauritians of Chagossian origin to this very present day, 50 years after they were uprooted. And this cruel displacement by the colonial masters of all the inhabitants from the Chagos archipelago flouts the very notions of justice and humanity. Excellencies, today, in some countries around the world, the growing wave of refugees and displaced persons often sparks acrimonious discussions on civilizational identity and on an outright rejection of other cultures, giving rise to intolerance, xenophobia, and violent extremism. As more and more people cross and increasing numbers of interstate borders and maritime zones in search of security, jobs, and a better future, the need to confront, assimilate, or expel foreigners strains political systems and collective identities. But in Africa, warmly welcoming people from other shores and lands, even with limited means, has always been a key characteristic of African genuine humanity and compassion, our Ubuntu tradition. And in this context, I would like to warmly salute fellow African countries such as Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia, just to name a few, which work tirelessly to make displaced people and refugees feel at home. Excellencies, this year's theme coincides with the growing recognition of the humanitarian and development nexus and the need for greater collaboration and coherent support for all stakeholders to find solutions to forced displacement in Africa. It is extremely important that we all work hand in hand to ensure a focused, sustainable development for the whole African continent, which matches the objectives and targets of both Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063 for long-term peace, security, and prosperity. In this regard, I would like to commend the United Nations Plan of Action for Advancing Prevention, Protection, and Solutions for Internally Displaced People 2018-2020, which calls on all relevant actors to step up efforts to prevent, respond to, and resolve internal displacement by essentially addressing the protection needs of the forcibly displaced and seeking solutions to their plight in order to contribute to greater stability for countries and whole regions. As the UN Secretary General rightly pointed out earlier this year, Africa has set the gold standard for solidarity. Africa has indeed shown tremendous resolve and resilience in overcoming challenges and obstacles throughout decades and centuries. Hence, we are confident that Africa's new humanitarian architecture will address the root causes and achieve durable solutions. Excellencies, acknowledging our past achievements sends a message of hope and responsibility, encouraging us to make even greater efforts in the future. It is within our power to make things better and to reduce the incidence of suffering even further. Africa shall again succeed in leaving no one behind. I thank you for your kind attention.
Honorable Prime Minister, we are indeed very honored to have you amongst us, and especially at the African Dialogue series based on the AU theme. And I want to once again appreciate your presence and the presence of your delegation. Many, many thanks for sharing with us your insights and sharing with us this platform. We will now move on to the last segment of our opening session this morning. We have two more speakers for this segment, and Honorable Prime Minister, you will be with us throughout this. Just to listen.
I will have to leave to attend a few other meetings, unfortunately.
Afterwards. Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister, who agreed to be with us and listen to the next two speakers. Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. Her Excellency Ms. Inga Roda King, the President of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, unfortunately also had to leave. But we have with us Her Excellency Morna Jewel, the Ambassador of Norway, and who's the Vice President of ECOSOC. She will read the statement on behalf of Ms. King. Thank you for being with us, Your Excellency.
President of the 73rd Session of the General Assembly, President of the Security Council, Secretary General of the United Nations, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to join you this morning as we turn our attention to the plight of one of the most vulnerable segments of the population, forcibly displaced persons. We are witnessing a rapid increase in the number of forcibly displaced persons across Africa. In March, Cyclone Idai put 3 million people into a humanitarian crisis across Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe, as was highlighted at the ECOSOC meeting on the cyclone last month. The migration crisis in part of North Africa also reminds us of the need for urgent and durable solutions for internally displaced persons. Climate change displacement is a reality. Global temperature rise is a threat multiplier, aggravating already fragile situations, leading to forced displacement and migrations, as well as contributing to social tensions and conflict. This came out clearly at ECOSOC's joint meeting with the Peacebuilding Commission in November. The meeting showed the deep impact of climate conditions on the Sahel, a region already faced with multifaceted challenges. In the Sahel, some 4.9 million people have been displaced this year, while 24 million people require humanitarian assistance throughout the region. It is clear that we need policies that take into account that peace, security, humanitarian and development nexus. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development envisages and I quote, just, equitable, tolerant, open, and socially inclusive world in which the needs of the most vulnerable are met. It makes specific references to internally displaced persons. Likewise, I commend African leaders' effort in addressing the challenges of IDPs within Agenda 2063, the Organization of African Unity Refugee Convention, and the Kampala Convention, which are unique and exemplary framework in the world. We must implement these frameworks to strengthen resilience and prevent conflicts in Africa. It is also vital to address basic needs of people at their places of origin. They need to have access to water and sanitation, energy, healthcare, equality, education, or quality, equality as well, but quality education, technology, and economic opportunities. The promise of the recently ratified African Continental Free Trade Area for the continent, in particular its young people, is immense. It is expected to create 1.2 billion consumers and a combined GDP of US $2.5 trillion, boosting intra-African trade by 52% by year 2022. The free trade area is also expected to lead to a significant improvement in infrastructure, the creation of decent jobs, economic growth, and social development. Fulfilling its objective would contribute to the achievement of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and the African Union Agenda 2063. The African Union Free Trade Area could also mobilize significant resources to achieve the SDG. I recently attended the African Regional Breakout Session during the ECOSOC Youth Forum, where I witnessed African youth robustly reaffirm their commitment to achieve the SDGs. They advocated for the concerns and priorities of migrants, refugees, and the internally displaced to be integrated into policy making to ensure integration and inclusivity. I was happy when parliamentarians in the African session pledged to enact laws to ensure that migrants and the forcibly displaced are guaranteed all their rights and to future domesticate the SDGs, the Compact for the Migration, and Agenda 2063 international frameworks. Lastly, the international community, including the United Nations system, must enhance their commitment to work together coherently to better support countries to put them on the path to resilience and risk-informed 2030 agenda, and to ensure that no one is left behind in Africa we all want. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Mona Joel for her statement. And as we said, this ADS is focused on the AU theme of the Year of Refugees, Returnees and Internally Displaced Persons towards durable solutions to forced displacement in Africa. We are pleased to have amongst us the champion of this theme, represented by His Excellency Mba, the permanent representative of Equatorial Guinea to the United Nations. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias. Excelentísimo señor Pravin Kumar, primer ministro de Mauricio. Excelentísima señora Sesuma Malinata Samate, comisaria para Asuntos Políticos de la Unión Africana, representando al señor presidente de la Comisión de la Unión Africana, Moussa Faki. Excelentísima señora Diance Gawanas, subsecretaria general y asesora especial para África de las Naciones Unidas. Antes que nada, deseo transmitirles los saludos de Su Excelencia el Presidente de la República de Guinea Ecuatorial, Obiangama Bazogo, y sus agradecimientos por la invitación que le fuera formulada para participar personalmente en este importante evento en su calidad de líder del tema del año 2019 de la Unión Africana, conocido como el Año de los Refugiados, Repatriados y Personas Internamente Desplazadas, hacia soluciones sostenibles para el desplazamiento forzoso en África, pero que por razones de agenda no ha podido desplazarse a Nueva York como hubiera sido su deseo. Es, por lo tanto, en su nombre que tengo el altísimo honor de tomar la palabra en esta serie de diálogos de África 2019. Señora Presidenta, agradecemos a la Oficina de la Subsecretaria General y Asesora Especial de las Naciones Unidas para África, a la Comisión de la Unión Africana, a la Agencia de Desarrollo de la Unión Africana, AUDA, a ACNUR, OCHA, a PNUD, ECA y al Departamento de Comunicaciones Globales por organizar esta reunión denominada Serie de Diálogo de África 2019, que consideramos muy oportuna por estar en línea con el tema de la Unión Africana para el año 2019, año de refugiados, repatriados y personas internamente desplazadas, hacia soluciones sostenibles para el desplazamiento forzoso en África. Deseamos aprovechar esta oportunidad para felicitar de manera especial a ACNUR por sus esfuerzos en cumplir con su mandato de programas de protección de refugiados en condiciones.
Son mandat de protection.
La magnitud presentada
of the current figures that we see in the most recent reports on refugees and internally displaced persons recalls to us that what we are seeing is a moment in human history when we have reached numbers that have never been seen before, where as states we have the obligation to provide an urgent practical solution to address this alarming situation. The African continent is very much affected by the massive forced displacement. We host more than a third of the displaced population in the world. We recognize the situation of the refugee crisis that exists on our continent. In order to address this, the African Union has committed to implementing specific measures. In this regard, and as part of the long-term vision contained in Agenda 2063, the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union in 2016 adopted a Common African Position, the CAP, in order to strengthen humanitarian action on the continent. The CAP defines the new humanitarian architecture in Africa, which includes the creation of the African Humanitarian Agency as a vehicle for humanitarian action. The new humanitarian architecture also stresses the need to address the fundamental causes and to search for lasting solutions to the problems, such as strengthening the ability of states and other interested parties in addressing the challenges of forced displacement throughout the continent. In this context, the Assembly of Heads of State held in Nouakchott, Mauritania in July of 2018 declared 2019 the Year of Refugees, Returnees and Internally Displaced Persons towards durable solutions to forced displacement in Africa. And in the same way, we are very proud that His Excellency President of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea was designated guarantor of this decision and initiative. This is an appointment that he was honoured to accept, and he's committed himself to making 2019 an exceptional year looking for lasting solutions for refugees, returnees and internally displaced persons in Africa. This year, the African Union will be commemorating two key treaties on forced displacement, namely the 50th anniversary of the adoption of the 1969 Convention of the Organization of African Unity on Refugees, and the 10th anniversary of the African Union Convention of 2009 on the protection and assistance to internally displaced persons in Africa of 2009, the Kampala Convention. We hope that all of these legal instruments will serve to improve the lives of refugees. Madam President, we understand that the African efforts to strengthen cooperation and solidarity with refugees and the host countries that are affected must be assisted in line with international efforts. In this regard, we welcome the cooperation with the African Union Commission and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, for the implementation of the humanitarian architecture of the African Union through a training program on laws and policies known as the Livingston Program. My country benefited from this training program in December of 2017. We welcome the adoption of the Global Compact on Refugees of 2018, which demonstrated the commitment of the international community to more effectively address a great number of displacements. And we'd like to congratulate those countries who opened up their borders to welcome refugees, irrespective of their limitations in terms of resources, and we would ask the international community to fulfill its commitment to share the burden and responsibility which are inherent in hosting refugees. The exponential growth of forced displacement throughout the world is linked to the global situation of conflict and violence, which also has seen some developments of great concern, particularly in Africa. And it's because of this concern that my country, on behalf of the African Union, tabled in the Security Council of the United Nations for adoption on the 28th of February last a draft resolution entitled Silencing the Guns in Africa by 2020, which was adopted unanimously in order to address the root causes of this problem. Also, as a guarantor of the topic for the year, my head of state put forward proposed priorities in order to achieve tangible results, namely promoting a renewed political strategy and willingness to address the fundamental causes and to provide lasting solutions that will include the eradication of long-term refugee situations. Secondly, to support the African Union as they put into practice their new humanitarian architecture, particularly to assist the African Humanitarian Agency as a vehicle for providing a humanitarian response and effective assistance. Thirdly, to mobilize member states for the effective implementation of the Convention of the Organization of African Unity of 1969 and the Kampala Convention of 2009, and to mobilize resources for the financing both of the humanitarian action of the African Union as well as that of the Humanitarian Agency. In conclusion, allow me once again to thank all member states and their allies for the support that they continue to provide to displaced persons on the African continent. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias por...
Thank you very much for your statement, sir.
For your statement. And with that, we have come to the end of our opening session, and I want at this stage to once again thank the Honorable Prime Minister for having been with us and that he will take leave from us at this stage. And so I will hand over to Ms. Eba Kalondo. Eba Kalondo, spokesperson of the African Union Commission, just to take us through the process going forward. But in the meantime, I will take leave from His Excellency, the Honorable Prime Minister.